But black economic empowerment started off as something that even the big corporates accepted. So any company that does business with the government has to have at least 30% of its shareholdership owned by previously disadvantaged. And that used to mean blacks, coloreds, and Indians. Now it only means friends of the ANC, small elites, okay? The vast majority of South Africa has not benefited from that at all. And so 30% of any company that does business with the government has to be black owned. But they're extending that by the year. There's now broad-based black economic empowerment. And they're trying to push through a law that companies with more than 50 employees, private companies, real estate agents, have to have the same. So you have a private company with 55 people and you're being told who you can hire, who you have to hire, and who you cannot fire. We're also massively overregulated. So that, I'll give you an exact number. There are 140 race-based laws in South Africa, and 111 of them were added after 1994. So the ANC government has instituted a racist policy and are creating what I call economic genocide.
So what really happened at that point? And then that'll obviously get us to where we are now.
Yeah.
So apartheid ends, things are looking good.
Yeah. Country's
2008,
rocking.
people are now on to other issues in the world. So why didn't the gravy train continue?
Because within the ANC original doctrine, which was, I think is 1920s, 1930s, was built the Soviet playbook. And it has been implemented slowly and effectively. Donald Trump calls South Africa DEI as a country, and he's absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think this is why Americans are now feeling this story.
And noticing.
So, yeah.
And what happened was Nelson Mandela stood as a giant, as a saint, astride the ANC, South Africa, and the evil ANC doctrine of implementing racist policies, socialist policies. And he kind of managed the transition. Mbeki, who followed him, did the same. He had his faults, but in general, everything was working. But Jacob Zuma, trained in Russia, came to power. Not a very intelligent man, a populist, but he began to implement the National Democratic Revolution, NDR. Everything with 3 letters seems to be bad. And RET, Radical Economic Transformation. And what has happened since...
That kind of says it right there.
Don't you? I mean, it says it all.
Yeah.
And from then on, they implemented something called cadre, or cadre, C-A-D-R-E, deployment. And Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, was a member of that committee, secret, inside the ANC, that basically said, we need to replace any white person that is a position of power, authority, or handles a budget. And I'm not talking about just senior people. I'm talking about a small town manager of a sewage work, small town manager of the, people that pick up rubbish or handle the electricity. They were replaced one by one by one.
So this is why I think Trump has hit something with the connection to America, because we've been playing these videos of the mayor of Chicago basically doing the exact same thing right now. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
But they put in place people who were loyal, but not competent, not clever, people that would obey instructions. And a maintenance budget was basically an opportunity to steal.
Mm-hmm.
They'd hire consultants, pay their friends, and the deindustrialization of South Africa began then. South Africa has gone backwards in fixed investment in infrastructure. And if you go outside of the Western Cape, which is run by the opposition party, called the Democratic Alliance, it's almost another world. There are potholes in the roads. There's raw sewage in the street. There's E. coli off the coast of Durban. Surfers can't surf. Things are falling apart. And if you go to towns like, even Johannesburg, downtown Johannesburg is basically Mogadishu. The country has fallen apart.
You didn't tell me that when you invited me to Johannesburg.
No, I invited you to Cape Town.
Oh, okay.
That was a good part of
South
Africa.
Okay.
And it's been an absolute meltdown. And from 2008 to today, the country has grown I mean, it's growing at 1% and less. Population growth at 2% means we get poorer every year.
Right.
The country is falling apart, absolutely falling apart. We have load shedding, which means you get 6 hours a day of no electricity. How do you run an economy on that basis? And it's because the ANC know how to break so they can steal. They break so they can steal. They're kleptocrats, ineptocrats, and let me just keep going on the adjectives.
Yeah.
They're racist, anti-white, and anti-colored, and anti-Indian, socialist, anti-American, and anti-Semitic. That is our ANC government, and that is the head of the ANC is Cyril Ramaphosa, who was in the White House yesterday. A disgrace he is.
Okay, so obviously we'll get to the to the racial reckoning that seems to be happening now. But on the economic side, or just on the day-to-day life side, so they start instituting these policies, they're hiring inept people. I mean, this quite literally sounds exactly like our previous government, which was hiring based on skin color and gender and sexuality and the rest of it. And we saw what the fruits of that were. People start waking up to it. But is it just not enough people to turn it around? I mean, what's happening to the functioning people? Are they all going to, Galt's Gulch?
So what happens is it's not just that. They institute policies called Black economic empowerment. Sounds good. And that begins in the mid-90s. And everybody said, okay, we do need more, we need more of the previously disadvantaged.
There's some reckoning that needs to be done.
We've got to bring them into the economy. We've got to bring them into the capitalist world. We've got to empower people, make them make money and things like that. But Black economic empowerment started off as something that even the big corporates accepted. So any company that does business with the government has to have at least 30% of its shareholdership owned by previously disadvantaged. And that used to mean Blacks, coloreds, and Indians. Now it only means friends of the ANC. Small elites, okay? The vast majority of South Africa has not benefited from that at all. And so 30% of any company that does business with the government has to be Black owned. But they're extending that by the year. There's now broad-based Black economic empowerment. And they're trying to push through a law that companies with more than 50 employees, private companies, real estate agents, have to have the same. So you have a private company with 55 people and you're being told who you can hire, who you have to hire, and who you cannot fire. We're also massively overregulated. So that, I'll give you an exact number. There are 140 race-based laws in South Africa, and 111 of them were added after 1994. So the ANC government has instituted a racist policy and are creating what I call economic genocide. And we're going to get back to that word. It's been used a lot.
Oh, we will get back to that.
I want to explain.
Well, it's interesting because when you said to me on the show a few months ago, 140 race-based laws, you said it to me live in air, and we don't edit for content, but in my head I was thinking, could that possibly be true? And then we aired it. We aired it, of course, as we always do without editing. And then immediately I saw all these people saying, that simply can't be true. There's just no way. And then, of course, all the fact checkers came in and we checked on Grok and everything else, and it absolutely is true for sure. And the quotas that you just mentioned also are true. Was there some way that this could have gone a different direction in some sense? Like, was the reaction to something that was prejudice, let's say, going to lead to this no matter what?
So there's something that's happened in South Africa, which began with Jacob Zuma, but it was really built into the Soviet playbook, the ANC playbook, well in advance, called state capture. And state capture is you capture the heights of industry, the heights of culture, and all of a sudden people wake up and they can't go anywhere. They're trapped. So big corporates, people go, Rob, why are you the only businessman in South Africa standing up? And I've been very vocal about saying that the corporate South African is a coward, a colluder, or has been captured. And I had a very good friend of mine who runs one of the biggest supermarket chains in South Africa, took me aside and said, Rob, you're being unfair on the corporate chieftains. They do the best they can. They're not cowards. Some are colluders, but they really have been captured. And I said, tell me what you mean. He said, big corporates have the PIC, the Public Investment Corporation, government entity, like a sovereign wealth fund. invested in their businesses for 10, 20, 30%. And they have directors. They have, DEI appointees. They have unions. They have employees that don't know if they're going to make it to the next paycheck. And there's some white-colored Indian or black chief executive earning a salary, earning equity that is supposed to stand up, Rob. You're telling them to stand up and call out the government. How are they going to do that? They're captured. They've got people on their board that won't let them speak. They've got jobs. They've got, And I kind of felt there's some relevance in that. But
right. It shows you how at every level it
as you
seeps
said,
into
at
everything.
what point could people have got together and stood up and say no more? Well, the playbook has been played out very effectively. And South Africans are captured. They're trapped or captured or they've left.
Yeah.
And 1 million South Africans, mainly white, have left the country. Gone the other way.